I'm going to have it up on my YouTube. I'll post a link so you'll be able to go back and watch it. But yeah, let's get started, everybody. So I'm going to be going over my plan for the week, kind of some thoughts on what I'm looking at and how I think the market is going to set up. Keep in mind this week is going to be super busy, right? We have FOMC and we have a lot of other big tech companies reporting, specifically a lot of growth stocks. Names like UPST, Affirm, App, those type of names that, you know, are really high beta and that have been moving really well in the past few weeks, all reporting. So that's going to be pretty big for the momentum of the markets, in my opinion. And I think overall, we're set up for a pullback, right? Even though, you know, no one wants to hear a pullback, especially if you're a bull. I think a pullback would be healthy in this scenario. The reason why is because you could see how extended we are from the lows already, right? We've moved a staggering 20% already on the S&P. Qs have already moved 20%. It's likely to see us set up some sort of inverse head and shoulders. That's kind of what I'm looking at for the markets to set up. You could see we're kind of building it out, right? We have this left shoulder here, we have the head, and then we have like the right shoulder right there. So I'm thinking that's probably what's going to set up. That would put us somewhere around a retest of like 550, right? On the S&P. That looks like the most probable look. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean we have to pull all the way back in, but I'd at least want to see us test the key moving averages, right? We broke above the 50 EMA, we broke above the 21 and the 8 EMA, and we're sitting like right at the 200 and the 100 EMAs on the daily time frame. If we could set something like this up, some sort of inverse head and shoulders, that would set up really well for the markets. And if you look at some of the recent leaders from last year, for example, NVDA, you could see we're kind of setting up the same look, right? We have that left shoulder, the head here, and then the right shoulder potentially already formed on NVIDIA. And I could see the market setting something similar up to this and then kind of breaking out together with the rest of the markets. So I think that is likely what is going to set up. Now, the key levels that you want to be watching this week, I think the 550 level on the S&P is going to be the most important. That's where I would buy the dip. I wouldn't look to get long too quick, right? I think we do set up for a pullback into 550. 550 is going to be like the spot that you should look to get long off of. The reason why I'm using 550 is because if you look at the previous price action, it was a massive support level right here. Then we broke under and we had a massive, you know, move lower. Then we retested it. We dropped back down below. We retested it again here. We rejected, and then we finally broke above and we try to kind of hold above that spot. So far, we've been holding above, and I think that sets up for a beautiful retest. Because remember, right? Previous levels of support become resistance once price breaks above, and now it should become support again, right? Because that's how a strong trend should move if that's what the market sets up. Now, 550 is going to be the key level. If we break under 550, you can expect some more prolonged continuation, right? I want everyone to go back and study how the markets moved in 2022 when we came out of the bear market, right? It didn't just V-shape all the way back into new highs, right? There was multiple times that we made, higher lows, but it had pretty deep pullbacks, right? You see these two pullbacks right here. And even later on in April, we had a pretty big pullback for like a month or two, right? So remember, pullbacks are welcome within the markets, and you're not, price isn't going anywhere. It's not going to just go straight up. It's not just going to go straight down. If there's going to be continuation to either side, there's going to be a chance for you to get in, and you have to be patient and wait for A+ setups. So how does an A+ setup actually look like? This is what I look for in the markets whenever I'm looking for, A+ setups, something like this. So let me zoom in this a little bit. This is what the markets did to the downside, right? We had this next leg up right here. We set up the first buy point on the S&P about a week ago, right? So if you miss this right here, which was the first buy point, this was the wedge pop, right? Now you could see how extended we are from the low. We're up 11% with basically no pullbacks, right? So if we go back to this chart, you could see what happens again. Look, you make them move up, right? If you miss it, it's okay. No, it's not the end of the world, right? The market is going to give you another opportunity to get in. It's probably going to set up some sort of exhaustion flag. And you can clearly see that the market has been getting exhausted just by the candles, right? The candles are getting thinner basically every single day. You had a gap up here on Thursday, it was very thin. Then you had another gap up here on Friday, it was very thin, even though we were up like a 1.5%. The candles are very thin. signifying that the markets are a little bit exhausted, and something like this should set up. So again, do not have FOMO, right? We should set up some sort of consolidation that could set up for an inverse head and shoulders. And then if we're gonna go higher, you're going to have a chance to get in. So again, I want to stress how important this is, especially with FOMC coming up. Do not be the person that chases the highs just because you missed this move right here. There's going to be a ton of opportunities, and this is something I stress every single time I speak about, setups and stuff like this. You want to be patient. Do not buy the terrible setups just because you missed the first move, or even if you caught the first move. Don't just buy random setups up here, because the time to get risk on in the markets is when we're closer to the key moving averages, which would be somewhere around here, right? And you could see the same thing ended up happening for the shorts, right? Shorts got way too overextended here to the downside. We had a big pullback, and then the next kind of move down occurred right here, which was the better short, right? Shorting down here just made no sense. So you have to understand that sometimes the markets need to consolidate a little bit. We have had a very extremely strong market in the last few months, specifically in April, right? Super strong market, probably one of the best monthly candles we've seen in a while. But that doesn't mean that we'll just V-shape up, right? You need to wait for the best setups in the market. You need to wait for the times when the market tells you it's going to continue to go higher, right? And if you look at something like Bitcoin, it's already kind of giving you clues, right? Bitcoin was the first kind of major asset to start breaking out here on Monday, April 21st. You could see it kind of started this run up. You could see it's starting to get exhausted, right? Look at the volume. This is why volume is so important, guys. And this is why I teach volume so much, and why I tell everyone to analyze volume. If you look at the volume on what's happening here on Bitcoin, it had a ton of volume off the lows as it was moving up. Then it had low volume as it was consolidating, high volume as it's moving up. But notice here, it starts to really fade on the volume. It's going down, right? So what does that tell you? Well, it doesn't tell you that big money is selling. What it tells you is that buyers are exhausted, and what they're waiting for is another chance to potentially get long. But that would need to be off of a pullback, off of a consolidation, off of a tangible pattern that buyers can buy where it makes sense. Smart money is going to buy where it makes sense, not at the highs, right? They're not buying here, they're buying here, right? And you could see it just based off the volume. So that's what you want to look for in the next few days. In my opinion, that's how the market is going to set up. This could take maybe a few days. It could take a few weeks. Obviously, we'll see how FOMC, moves the market. We'll see if we get any rate cuts, or if the Fed is planning on, kind of speeding up their timeline of rate cuts, because inflation is lower, the job reports are pretty strong. So we'll see if that is going to be where the Fed trends, or if they stay, very firm on their policy and only do 2 rate cuts this year, which is probably the likely outcome. But we'll see what ends up happening, right? We're going to get some words from Powell as well, so hopefully we get some clear some clear guidance on what's going to happen in terms of rates in the next few months. So that's kind of the look here. QQQ is going to be very similar. The only difference between tech and the S&P is tech is just a little bit stronger in terms of where it's at compared to the moving averages, right? It made already a little bit of a bigger move. It's already through the 100 EMA, the 200 EMA, so it's already through that spot. But I still think, if you look at the chart, it's very clear we're getting an inverse head and shoulders. I would probably bet on this, kind of happening here. It's pretty clear, right? We could just continue to move up, but I don't think that's the highest probability outcome for this. So I'm thinking inverse head and shoulder gets built out. That would take a few days or maybe a week or so or two to build out, and that's something you could watch for. And again, if you're looking at the NASDAQ or QQQ, the key level for tech would be right here as well, right? 464, very similar to the S&P. Why is this a key level? Was major support, became resistance, and then now we're looking for it to hold again, right? And that would actually set up almost perfectly for that inverse head and shoulders to form, right? So that's kind of what I'm watching for tech. That would be my buy spot. That is where I want to put on risk, right? I'm not looking to put on a lot of risk into the beginning of the week, specifically, with Fed coming up, with the FOMC coming up. And I'm also not looking to put on a lot of risk when the market's super overextended at the highs, right? I'm trying to size down on all my positions. Me personally, I only have one, big position at this point. And then I'll see what the market, gives me. And then from there, we'll size up and really get, a lot of our accounts in positions. But I don't think it makes that much sense to be, very over leveraged into this spot. Now, IWM, very similar look to the S&P and Qs, just a little bit weaker when it comes to, if you look at the big moving averages, the 100 and 200 EMAs, we're still a little bit below that spot. So the, IWM was one of the weakest indexes off of the move here in December, and it's kind of been, you know, pulling back pretty hard. Now it's trying to come back up here. We'll see if small caps can continue higher. I would love to see small caps have a lot of strength. You could see on Friday, small caps were actually leading, right? They were up 2.5% when the rest of the market was only up 1.5%, meaning tech stocks seem like they want to rest a little bit, but maybe small caps can continue to lead and show a lot of strength here in the upcoming weeks. That would be great for the momentum of the market, because the momentum usually comes off of growth stocks and it comes off of small cap names, which is obviously what the Russell is. Now, the Dow also looks pretty good. This one has a little bit of a different shape. You can see it's kind of, you know, it's a little bit different. The S&P and Qs are already somewhere close to this high right here, where the Dow is still lagging a little bit. So the Dow could eventually set up some sort of inverse head and shoulders, but it is a little bit off that spot. We'll see how that, you know, transfers to tech strength, right? Because remember, a lot of times if tech is weak, where does money go? It goes into industrial stocks. It goes into, you know, defensive stocks, cyclical stocks, consumer stocks. This is usually where money rotates in a quote unquote safe haven, right? And the reason why this happens, and not a lot of people know this, is because, you know, institutions, if you think about it, they're managing other people's funds, right? So they have to mainly keep their funds pretty active, right? They can't really just pull out all their money out of the market. Like obviously they can reduce their exposure, but a lot of the times instead of pulling money out the markets, what they do is just they rotate funds, right? And that's why you've heard of like, you know, end of month rebalancing when it comes to institutions, or, you know, rotation. That's like a term you probably heard. This is a, you know, a true term when markets, you know, and funds rotate money out of certain stocks and go into different names. So this is why I like to watch, you know, all the different type of sectors to see where money is really flowing. For example, on Friday, you could see it was clear that small caps were getting the best of the flows, right? And the Dow was a little bit, you know, weaker, whereas tech and SPY were kind of equal in terms of their movement. Usually tech is supposed to have higher beta, so that one usually moves more than the S&P when the market kind of moves in unison. So the moment you start seeing, you know, the S&P and Qs move together in terms of the percentage, usually that's a pretty good indication that tech stocks are going to rest a little bit. And that's kind of what I'm seeing here. Specifically, a lot of the tech stocks that have made some pretty big moves already off the lows. And you know, ones that have gapped up on earnings, for example, something like Microsoft. So that's what I'm looking at here. We'll see what the Dow ends up doing. Same kind of look for the Dow though as well. Like I'd want to see it hold 406. That's kind of like the key spot. If it can hold 406, I could see it come up to 427. Now going back to Bitcoin really quickly, we do want Bitcoin to hold up, right? Because remember, it was kind of showing us what the momentum of the market was. When Bitcoin pulled back on the weekend over the last 2 days, it was pretty clear that the markets were going to gap down, right? And it's kind of crazy to think about, but Bitcoin has been like moving before the markets have been moving. Even when we made this next leg up right here on Thursday, the markets gapped up on Friday, right? Because of how strong Bitcoin was after hours. So Bitcoin has been kind of giving us some clues into what the markets have been doing. So we would want to see, you know, BTC hold up, set up pretty nicely. Again, what I'm thinking is going to happen is it sets up for a like, you know, deeper kind of wedge pullback. It failed to really break out and hold here like late in the week. This weekend it's pulling in. That's going to be, you know, the area that it has to start. It has to start holding up somewhere around this spot right here. So I'd love to see Bitcoin hold up. A lot of crypto stocks are also setting up pretty nice. MSTR, Mara, Coin. Coin has earnings, but a few of the other stocks look really, really good in the next coming days, in my opinion. So we'll see if Bitcoin can set up. That would be great for a potential setup on that. The VIX looks like it's like right at the end of the gap fill right here. It has just a little bit left to go to fill this gap from Liberation Day, the tariff day that Trump announced. So it's all the way down to 21.17. So again, remember, when VIX starts to come down to like $20, right, it makes more sense for the markets to start pulling back a little bit. Why? Because the VIX already pulled back so much off the highs, right? It's already coming down to like more so like neutral levels. This is when there's less fear in the markets. But when the VIX comes down, usually, right, it means that there is a better, you know, time to buy some hedges for, you know, funds. So what they'll do is start buying hedges because volatility is cheaper. So, you know, puts are going to be cheaper. The VIX in general is going to be cheaper. So sometimes, you know, if the VIX comes down specifically, you know, if it's filling the gap from Liberation Day, it might make sense for them to put on some hedges and be a little bit more careful. So it would kind of back our thesis a little bit that the S&P might pull in just a bit. But overall, I'm thinking we go higher, right? I'm thinking we go higher in the next few months. I just think over the next, you know, few days or the next week or so, we do see a little bit of a pullback to set up for that right shoulder. And I think that makes the most sense in the coming days. But we'll see what ends up playing out, right? The markets at the end of the day can do whatever they want to do. We're prepared to move and trade either side. Depends on, the strength and how things are moving. But the key levels that I'm looking to really buy off of are going to be around that spot right there, that kind of big weekly level on Qs and the S&P. So that's kind of what I'm watching. So yeah, that's going to be kind of a recap of the indexes. I want to go really quickly over some sectors that are super, super strong. So you guys know I absolutely love to track sectors. That's kind of like my bread and butter. I'm really good at identifying sector strength, looking for the strongest sectors in the market, trading the strongest sectors in the market, the ones that are holding, things up and leading things higher. So I'm going to show you a few sectors that I'm really, really interested. The first one is going to be aerospace stocks. So if you don't know what aerospace stocks are, it's companies like ASTS, Lunar, RKLB, right? You've definitely heard of some of these. ASTS and RKLB are probably my favorite just because of the fact that, they have the biggest market caps and they're the most liquid. But all of them look absolutely phenomenal. If you look at the weekly chart on ASTS, for example, it looks just absolutely great. Look at the volume patterns. It's very clear that accumulation is taking place. If you look at the monthly looks absolutely phenomenal. So I'm thinking ASTS has some more upside to go. All these sectors that I'm listing, I would definitely keep an eye on for the next few months. Think about it, right? There needs to be some sort of theme or some sort of leaders that are going to pull the markets higher. What do you think it's going to be? It's going to be AI. It's going to be stuff that we haven't seen yet. Innovation, right? Innovation is what grows, the economy. What grows, the world economy as well. Like we need innovation to continue to, get better as a society, right? So aerospace innovation, right? AI innovation. I think we're still in the first kind of major wave of AI. Obviously, the first real wave was in 2023 and 2024, but I think we're still, in the early stages of AI. A lot of people thought, AI was going to bust in 2025 and we were going to, come all the way back down and do a dot-com bubble type of move. I don't think that's going to be the case because I think we're still not, there yet when it comes to seeing what the power of AI actually is. A lot of this innovation is still a few months or a few years out. So I think we do have a lot of upside left in AI stocks. And a lot of demand is still, there for AI, even with the economy slowing down and tariffs and everything like that. A lot of these companies, Microsoft, Meta, are coming out and saying they're looking for more, AI infrastructure. So I think that, there is going to be another leg up there. And I think that's going to be a great sector to watch. Aerospace is going to be a great one as well because who doesn't love going to space, right? Space stocks going to be really good. I like ASTS a lot. This one is getting contracts from companies basically every single, month. It's gotten a ton of huge contracts. Google is taking a 4% stake, right? So there's clearly something the stock is doing right or this company is doing right. And I think it's going to be an absolutely massive winner. So if you don't own ASTS or RKLB, I would definitely start accumulating some. But just to look for even trades on these, I would look to see this kind of develop out. You could see on ASTS on the daily time frame, we had a pretty big ignition candle right here. Now, obviously, we don't want to just buy it when it's up 15% already. But what you could look for now is see if it sets up some sort of flag with the moving averages catch up and then set up for that ideal buy that we look for, right? Again, going back to this, this picture right here, you have a big move up right here. You have that, buy setup right here, right? So this is kind of what we're looking for to potentially set up on this. So that's what I'm watching for ASTS. You also have Lunar, which is a pretty decent one. I would actually prefer ACHR more. I'm sure you guys are familiar with this name. This is going to be Archer, another aerospace stock. Look at the weekly time frame. It broke out of a stage 2 base. It's retesting perfectly here. It looks like it's setting up for a big move up. Another really nice one is going to be Joby. That one's not bad either. Joby looks like it's starting to reverse a little bit. Not as strong as ACHR, ASTS, and RKLB. I would recommend, sticking to those. But if you're looking for a cheaper name, this one's about $6, so it's pretty nice. It has some pretty good potential as well. So this could be really nice. I like ASTS, RKLB a lot. Another sector that looks absolutely phenomenal. If you guys didn't notice, on Friday, quantum stocks absolutely ignited. So we had a nice move here on Friday, but a lot of the move kind of got shot back down. This is the highest daily close we've had on quantum stocks in a while. You can see we closed all the way at the highs. So it's showing a little bit of a character change, had a ton of volume. Now, a few of these companies are reporting earnings over the next week. So that's the one thing I would watch for. But I do think, something like IONQ, I think easily comes back up to $43. I mean, just look at the weekly chart on it. It's just like so clean. It's going to, retest this level right here. It held a ton of volume off the lows. It doesn't look like any big, selling here other than this, big drop right here on news. But since then, it looks like accumulation here down at the lows. Remember, again, institutions are not going to be buying up here. They don't want like a terrible cost average, right? They're looking to buy down into lows to accumulate, and that's where a lot of the buying happens. So this is a great chart on IONQ. This one looks phenomenal. I think QBTS is another great one. Just look at the volume patterns. Ton of volume as it goes up, low volume as it comes down. Over the last few weeks, every single time it's had high volume, it's been from the buy side. It just looks really, really great. I think this one's going to continue to move higher. A few other ones, QSAI, QUBT, those look really good. And then last but not least, there's a few other sectors I'm interested in. I would say semiconductors could be pretty interesting, especially if, a lot of the rotation comes back into AI. I mean, look at the performance of semis on Friday, right? We had AMAT 4%, AMD 2%, ARM 7%, Avgo 3%, right? Going down all the lists. You could see, semis moved really, really well. And for the, the tech index to only be up 1.5% with semis moving this much is pretty, it's pretty impressive on semis part. I think semis might get a little bit of a little bit of rotation back into those stocks. And if you're looking at semi stocks, NVIDIA is the leader, right? Or it has been, at least in the past few months. So I think, looking back at this, now we have to see if NVIDIA can get over 115. I think that's really going to tell a lot of the story. If NVIDIA can get over 115, I think there's a good chance, this comes back up, at least to maybe 121. It could also be forming like a big, daily head and shoulders here. On NVIDIA, but we'll see what ends up happening with this one. This is going to be a big tell though, right? It's still, trying to build out a pretty big weekly base. Definitely not clean action by any means at all. I like the daily a little bit more than the weekly. So we'll see if it gets to 115. That's going to be the key level. For me, the leading stock out of semis is clearly AVGO. I think this one's acted the best. On the weekly, it still looks very constructive. It bounced off the 50 MA. It's above all the weekly moving averages. I think that one looks pretty good. But I do think watching some of these, stocks wouldn't be a bad idea. For example, even AMD starting to look a little bit constructive, but we need to see if it can get through these key spots. It also has earnings coming up, so that's going to be pretty important. But like ARM looks really good. A lot of these names look pretty decent. So I'm watching to see if semiconductors can move up. And then the last sector that I'm really, really looking at is software stocks and, cybersecurity. If you remember, cybersecurity was leading the move higher earlier in the week. So something like Crowd, for example, really started to break out earlier in like last week, right? On Thursday, and made a really nice move up. This was kind of leading the move up. It's now a little bit extended, and you can clearly see that by the volume. So remember, again, right, we don't want to be chasing here at the highs. Just wait for it to pull back, and it sets up for an absolutely beautiful move and continuation high, right? Something like that. Same thing with something like ZS. This was incredibly strong early last week and into the beginning of the week. Then it kind of stalled a little bit because it's extended from the moving averages. But if it just sets up, you can just add it into that spot, right? So this is why I'm looking at this sector to potentially be like the next sector to set back up. Those could be some really nice setups to watch. And when it comes to sectors, I think these are the top three. And then you could look at obviously semis to see what it does there and see if it continues to get some nice flows. But I think these look really, really good. So this is the sectors that I'm watching. Now, in terms of my focus list and stocks that I think are ready early in the week, there's obviously a lot of stocks that I'm watching. But remember, when it comes to a focus list, right, you want to focus on the stocks that are ready to break out, right? That is to me what a focus list is, because there's a lot of stocks that look good, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're ready to break out because they don't have enough consolidation. For example, something like HIMS to me looks phenomenal, right? It looks really, really good, but it already kind of made the move to me. So I don't really have a level to use, and it also has earnings coming up. So I'd rather just wait for it to retest, right? But stocks that are still very tight and that are consolidating is what I'd focus on. So for example, a setup like Tesla, right? Could you see how this one still hasn't even moved out of the base? So if it gets over, right, you can easily look to take this for a trade, break over 295. We can look to take it up to 301. I think this is probably the best looking chart in the whole market, in my opinion. Now, obviously, we'll see what the overall market does. We need the market to have a lot of strength on Tesla. But if the market, can hold up in the next few days, I think this should really, really run. Maybe it needs a few more days of consolidation, but it has a super tight 5-day flag. It's setting up right under a key level here. Obviously, it would need a break above 295, but if it can get over 295, I think 300 plus should come super, super quick. So this is my top setup. my highest conviction setup for sure going into the week. Now, could it reject? 100%, right? It could definitely reject. This is a big level, right? If the markets move lower, this could reject and come back down. Maybe it needs more time to consolidate. That's, you know, a part of the process. Sometimes not every single stock will go, but the setup looks great. So just watch to see if it can take out 295. That's probably the level that, you know, we'll kind of get it to push over 300. But this is definitely the best setup in my opinion. So if I was going to choose one stock to trade this week, if it breaks out, I would say Tesla would be the one. The next name is NVIDIA, right? We talked about this a little bit. I think it looks really good over 115. That's just the key spot. If you go on the hourly, I mean, you could see how important that level is, right? It's rejected it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then like multiple times during this day right here. If it gets through that spot, I mean, it just doesn't have that much resistance until like 118, right? You could see there was like a big gap down right here where it moved very quickly lower. There's just not a lot of resistance to fill kind of this big volume gap. So I think it should move very quickly through that spot. And again, if NVIDIA is strong, I think the market's going to be strong. So that's why I like this one on the focus list. Another one that looks phenomenal is Hood. Now, the only issue I have with this one is the volume patterns aren't the most bullish, right? They're kind of all over the place. You guys know me. I usually like to see very clean volume patterns. But I am going to say that, you know, this one did come down on earnings. And to me, earnings, you know, take a little bit of time to digest. So maybe a few days after earnings and we could see what this one wants to do. But I think as long as it breaks $50, it should run really, really nicely. For example, if you look at a setup that was very similar to me, which is why I really like Hood. This is a firm on this day right here, on this setup right here. It had a pretty similar look. It kind of, you know, rejected really hard right here on earnings and it had a ton of volume, you know, to the downside. But then the next day, it ends up running with a ton of volume back through that $50 level and then kind of running back up, right? So to me, Hood looks very similar when it comes to like, you know, the same exact setup almost. And then it also is the same level. It's $50, right? So it's pretty, you know, like a big whole number level that I think if it gets over, it's going to run. So I like it over $50. It also had an inside day. It's holding right off the 8 EMA. Again, it's not the cleanest chart in the world, but it is solid, right? If it breaks over that spot, I think it should run back up and, you know, move up to 53, 55, and maybe even, you know, $60. So I think that's a nice one. Another good one is Docu. This looks really nice to me. It's setting up in a tight flag. Again, remember, right? Let's go back to this. You have the move up, you have the flag, you buy the breakout, right? So that's exactly what this is doing. It made the first leg up, then it's set up in a flag. Now it looks like it's setting up for a breakout. So this one is one that I'd watch over 83.5. I would like to see more volume on this because the volume has been pretty low on Docu. But look at the weekly chart, right? Look at the weekly chart. So it had a ton of resistance here, right? This is a stage 1 base. It breaks out. It retests the stage 1 base. It holds perfectly, and then it moves up. Now, I want you to compare this to the Roblox chart. Look at Roblox, right? So Roblox basically has the same exact chart. It broke out of a massive stage 1 base, right? Broke out, retested right here, perfectly set up a wedge, and now it's been just going absolutely parabolic almost over the last few days, right? So I think the setups are very similar, and there's a similarity between the two. ARK owns a lot of, you know, these stocks, right? It owns a lot of Roblox and it owns Docu too. So I think some of these ARK stocks could be making a pretty decent comeback. A lot of them are holding, you know, right at this stage 2 retest. So I'll see if Docu can kind of get through that spot. I think over 84, I like it a lot. That could be a nice spot to look for a move higher on it. Now, another stock that I'm watching, this is a stock that I'm looking for the downside. The reason why is because it's below the moving averages. So remember, one very simple key, you know, kind of tool that you could use to knowing if you should short or long stocks, literally simply use the moving averages. If a stock is above the moving averages, it's probably be better to, you know, long it. If it's below, it's probably better to short it, right? You could see, for example, on Apple here, every single time it gets below the moving averages, you have a pretty nice, you know, solid continuation to the downside. Every time it rejects, move down, right? Right here, rejects, move down, right? So now I think it's setting up potentially another bear flag. Now, obviously, this will depend on the market. If the market goes lower, I think this is a good hedge to maybe some of your longs or even just to look for a downside quick play. I think this could be a nice one. It has a pretty key level here, right at Friday's lows that it held. If it breaks below that, I think it comes down to 200 very quickly. If you look at the volume patterns, they're also pretty bearish, right? So you have like, I mean, you have decent volume off the lows, obviously, but then some pretty, you know, high volume here on the rejection, low volume consolidation as it goes up, and then high volume as it rejects. Now it's below all the moving averages. Look at how lagging it is compared to tech, right? If you look at QQQ, I mean, Qs are above the moving averages, above all the moving averages, and Apple's below all the moving averages, right? So that clearly shows weakness in the stock, which is why I think this one would be a good one to the downside. So under 200 202 is the level that I'm watching for this one. These are the top stocks that I'm looking at in terms of the actionable plays early in the week. Now, there's a lot of setups that look good as well, right? I'm going to review these pretty quickly. So there's a few that look good. For example, Coinbase, I think, still looks very solid. This would obviously need Bitcoin to move higher, but this also has earnings this week. So I usually like to avoid earnings, but we could watch this one over, 210. That would be the level to watch. So if it breaks 210, I think it's going to run really nicely. ASTS, obviously, we talked about this one a little bit. I would just like to see it set up. Dollar Tree is another one that looks good. Remember, these stocks, Dollar Tree is usually a pretty good hedge to whenever tech is a little bit weaker. So we can watch to see if Dollar Tree gets through the high. It still has a lot of the gap to fill. And this gap has a move all the way up to 94. So that's about $10 that I think it can move. Another one that looks good, HIMS. We'll see what happens with the earnings on this, but it looks solid. ACHR looks very, very good as well. Airbnb is another one that I like, software stock. So I think there's some pretty good, opportunity here. QBTS, quantum stocks look great. Look at App. This one looks super solid. This one just has earnings this week. So a lot of these names have earnings, which is why I'm being a little bit cautious with them, right? Obviously, we don't want to gamble on earnings. Anything could happen. So the probability is lower, but if they could set up, these are some pretty nice setups. I'm still watching them. Affirm looks really good. So there's still a lot of really good setups in the market, even though we are slightly extended. Another one that looks nice is like Okta, right? So I'm still watching a few stocks. I even like something like CoreWeave that was super strong on Friday. It was squeezing out a lot of shorts. I think this one could have some solid continuation. I even like something like Bull, for example, Bull, Webull. It looks really interesting, right? It looks kind of similar to what CoreWeave did on the wedge, and then it kind of popped with some nice volume. So we'll see if there's some opportunities on these type of stocks. I'll watch to see if anything sets up. But yeah, there's a lot of really good setups. Obviously, we would want the market to pull in a little bit to set up into the moving averages. So like if you look at, futures, US 100, you can kind of get a better idea on how this looks because it's a little bit cleaner without the, gaps and everything. But you could see, it's very clear that like an inverse head and shoulder wants to be set up. And that would set up right into the key moving averages, like retesting into the 8, 21, and 50. So I think that makes the most sense. Now, again, we'll see what the market does. It could just be super strong and take out these highs. I don't think that's going to happen, but if it does, you could trade it, right? You could look for a trade over this high right here, and then that would set up to test some of these bigger levels, near the highs, which would be pretty crazy to think about that we, came all the way off the low into new highs potentially. So we'll see if that sets up within the market. The market has been incredibly strong, so you have to, be very, you have to give the markets kind of like a little bit of credit and be like, okay, the markets have been super strong. Every dip has been getting bought. So we don't want to be too quick to look to short anything because shorts have been getting destroyed the last few, weeks. Specifically the last week, we just kind of been going straight up. Every single, move lower has been getting bought. So we'll see if that trend continues to hold up or if sellers can really, push us lower. What I would watch for to kind of get an idea on what the market, momentum and the sentiment looks like is where the candles close, right? If we can close somewhere near the lows and the markets can kind of, take us lower here, I think that would kind of give us a good indication that, okay, we're probably going to set up that inverse head and shoulders. But if things hold up and the moving averages start to catch up, maybe we could just, set up a high and tight flag for a continuation. But yeah, we'll see what the market ends up setting up. I think there's really, really good opportunities regardless, right? To either side, I think something like Apple could look very good for puts. If the markets do pull in even more, we could start to look for things to set up, right? I would like to see the markets under the moving averages if I'm looking to short, because that would obviously, benefit shorts because you'd be under the moving averages for more momentum. But if you're long, or if you're looking for longs, you want to see the market, retest the key moving averages and then hold off those spots to potentially move back up and make new highs. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much going to wrap it up in terms of what I'm watching. Really, really nice setups. If you guys have any questions, if you guys have any charts you're looking at, please let me know right now. I'm going to go over all the names you guys are watching. Yeah, type it in chat. We'll go over a few stocks you guys have. I'll do, a few minutes of a Q&A as well. Any questions that you have, anything that you're watching, let me know. How do I classify setups as A+, A, B+, etc.? So I actually made a whole checklist on this, on how to do that. But let me know if you want me to send that to you. I have a whole checklist on how to classify setups. If you expect downside, would you do puts? It all depends if there's a setup or not, right? Just because you think the stock market's going to pull in doesn't necessarily mean you always have to have, puts on it. It could just be, you're looking for something to set back up. It just depends if there's a setup. For example, if Apple has a setup and it breaks down and the market moves down, no reason not to take downside, right? But we only want to see if there's a setup on it or not. Shopify, I think Shopify looks great. It just has earnings coming up. Very similar to a lot of the other stocks I'm tracking though. Look really good. They just have earnings coming up, right? So I think I wouldn't touch it until earnings because it doesn't have like the best setup, but it looks good, right? Like it would just need to tighten up a little bit more and then we need to get earnings out the way. Dell, I'd say this one would probably set up that inverse head and shoulders as well. It looks kind of similar, right? You could see like it has this inverse head and shoulders look. Could be setting something up, maybe just a few more days to set that up. I don't think it's ready yet though, just because you can see how thin the candles have been. It's just kind of gone like 3 days up in a row. I would want to go, sideways a little bit and set up. Toast looks good as well. This is another one that I've been tracking, but again, just the earnings, right? There's a lot of earnings this week, so I would be careful with that. But if it breaks through 36.8, this is starting to become like an A+ setup here. I would like to see better volume patterns though. The volume patterns haven't been as good on it. BA looks pretty solid. Yeah, it does look good in terms of, the weekly, but I think the daily is just too extended. It's gone up like almost 20%, 30% off the lows, 40% without any, consolidation. So usually what happens when you make such a big move is you get a snapback, right? So I don't, like it could break over 188, but I think it needs just way more time to consolidate, let all the moving averages catch up, and then it could set up for a move higher. That's one thing that's going to be key over this week. I think patience is going to pay a lot. You have PTSD from Docu. I don't remember if there was like any trade that we took on that one. I forgot what it was. Was wondering how these speakers are talking. Well, you have to look at the White House. If you're looking at the White House, right? So like the economic calendar is just going to show you Fed speakers and it's going to show you like economic data, right? If you're looking for White House data, you have to go on the official White House calendar and see what type of events they have scheduled, because the White House does tell you when, Trump speaks, when, the secretary speaks, when, the cabinet members speak as well. So that's what you would do. Can I show my settings for EMAs? Yeah, it's just the 82150. So you just do right here. Inputs would be, well, actually, no, this is the wrong one. Sorry. 82150 EMA. Boom. CRM, okay, low. Let's go over CRM really quickly. CRM, I'd like for it to tighten up, right? It looks a little bit extended. It just came right into the 50 EMA and like a key level right here. I would like to see this kind of consolidate maybe back into the moving averages and then set up some sort of flag. You can see volume is also decreasing as it goes up. That's usually not a good sign, guys. If a stock is going up on volume, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to pull back, but it does most of the time mean that it will consolidate, because that just means exhaustion, right? Low volume move up means exhaustion. So for example, if you look at Netflix, even though it's been going up on pretty low volume. So I'm thinking maybe it just, pulls back and sets something up. Doesn't necessarily always have to mean a stock will pull back, but it's usually a pretty good indicator that it will. Okay, low. I think this one also needs to consolidate a little bit more. So there's a lot of stocks that look like this, right? They made a decent move here, but then, they need to kind of pull in a little bit and set up. I don't like the way it closed on Friday. That daily candle's a little bit ugly. So I would say maybe it needs to consolidate a little bit and set back up. If you look at the 200 and the 100 EMA, that's kind of like where it's rejecting right there. So probably needs to tighten up a little bit more. Oracle, same thing with this one. I'd say probably wants to, pull in a little bit on the like daily time frame back into the moving averages to set something up, maybe some sort of flag or wedge. And then we can look to take that continuation play out of that flag. That's kind of what I would watch for on it. Lucid over 2.63. I would probably not trade options on this because 2.63 is pretty cheap. But yeah, you could look for that. Just remember, it has earnings coming up. But again, look at the weekly time frame. It is still pretty weak, right, on the weekly. So I would prefer something like Rivian, where Rivian's already above the weekly moving averages. It looks just slightly better to me because of that, like just because of that one thing. Do you think MSTR can run up? I think it can run up, but it's more likely that it's going to consolidate, right? I'm saying this, I know I'm saying this about every single stock, but that's literally what the market's telling us, because look at how much some of these stocks have already ran, right? If you look at MSTR, it's ran 66% off the low without any major pullbacks, right? What you need after like a move like this is just a simple base like that and then sets up. I would definitely not buy the breakout over 403 on this, because if you look at the weekly, I mean, it's very clear that it just wants to go sideways a little bit. Even the craziest moves, like something like this here on MSTR, had a few weeks of sideways action. So something like this, weekly moving averages catch up, and then boom, it makes the next leg up. That's like usually how stocks like to move. AT&T, I usually don't love to trade stocks that have this big red candle here, you know, off the highs, even though this was based off news. I don't usually love to trade these type of stocks, but the setup does look pretty good. The volume patterns are pretty healthy. If it breaks over 28, it does look solid to me. Mara, this one looks very, very good. Obviously, you're going to have to see how Bitcoin moves, but I think if it breaks over 14.7, I would enter that one for sure. Can I comment on ARK? Yeah, I think ARK is set up really nicely. I actually think this one looks ready to break out. I think the only reason it didn't move, you know, and get through the highs on Friday is just because Tesla kind of rejected at the highs. But I think if it breaks over 52, it's going to run all the way to 54 and then maybe even back up to like 70 if the market, you know, gets back to the highs. Coin, I think, is set up beautifully. This one already has a setup, right? So whenever I'm talking about, you know, if a stock's overextended, this is kind of what I'm looking for it to do. Literally set up this, like just a tiny flag, right? Either a tiny flag or a more, you know, a bigger base, but a tiny flag will do. Something like this, at least here you can put on some risk and you have the moving averages to guide you. The only issue with this stock is just it's reporting earnings. So I don't really like to trade stocks that have earnings the same week. But you could trade it as an earnings run up, right? If it sets up and it breaks over, you know, 208.5, it looks good. Domino's Pizza. Let's see. Domino's Pizza weekly time frame. You know what? The weekly time frame looks really good. It looks like a cup and handle is forming here. Looks really solid. Nice weekly setup on it. Daily looks very strong as well. It needs to get over the 500 level. If it can get over that spot, I think it can run back to 521. Palantir is coming up on earnings. This is going to be probably one of the most important earnings this week. Even though you might think, you know, there's a bigger company out there that's reporting maybe like AMD or something like that. I think Palantir is going to be the most important earnings. The reason why is because this stock has really been leading, you know, a lot of the stuff higher, specifically momentum stocks. Palantir is going to tell it all, right? So it's reporting Monday, I'm assuming after hours. I'm not like, you know, 100% sure, but I'm assuming after hours. So we'll see what ends up happening on earnings, right? It needs to break over 126. If it can get over that spot, honestly, this could be like a $150 or $200 stock in a few months because the way that it's been moving, the strength that it's been having has been pretty incredible. So we'll see what ends up happening on earnings and how it moves. But it is giving us a little bit of clues that maybe it wants to pull kind of like a Netflix and make new all-time highs. Kind of what I'm thinking. Coin Palantir, we just went over those two, so should be good on that. SoFi, I think, needs more time to consolidate. I don't like that big like kind of gap and crap right here. Gapped up and then kind of crapped lower. I don't love the way that looks. So I'd probably say it needs more time to like set up some sort of flag or something over the next few days. Amazon looks pretty good. Amazon looks pretty good. If it can get over this 50 EMA, right? It's set up very similar to NVDA. If it can get over 192.6, I think it runs back up and fills the like Liberation Day gap up to 200. So it's got a nice setup on it. Curious why I went full size on Tesla with the market extended, because Tesla still has a setup, right? It's near the moving averages, so I could just risk the key moving averages, right? So obviously I took a lot of time on it, so I'm fine with, you know, holding it through, you know, some consolidation and stuff if it still needs to consolidate more. And if it stops out, it stops out. We just get it back again as it moves through the highs. But the reason why I took this one is because it just had, you know, the consolidation on it that a lot of the market's missing. And also remember, this one does move a little bit before the markets. Usually moves when the markets are lagging. So for example, like on Friday, if you look at QQQ, you know, the markets were, you know, not really moving that much that day, but Tesla had an absolutely, you know, insane day right there. So usually kind of, you know, lags a little bit. LYV. Okay, you guys want the classification link? I think I definitely posted this in the Discord, but I'll find this for you guys real quick. Okay, here you go. I'm going to link this right now in the chat, guys. Here you go. That's my setups rating guide. So right here, I just posted it in the chat. If you guys want to check it out, right here, it's a doc. It'll basically show you the difference between A+ setups and B+ setups and all that stuff, and kind of like what to look at to you know, separate those. So check that out. LYV. Oh, that looks good. I saw you post that one, King Baka. I saw you post that one. It looks really, really solid. I was watching it. Looks really good. If it can break over 135, It looks solid. It does say it's movies and entertainment though. I'm not really sure what this company does, but I did see some news about like movie tariffs. I don't know if that's going to impact this stock, but I don't know. We'll see. Apparently there's like 100% tariff on all movies made in other countries or something. I don't know. They're tariffing anything nowadays, I guess. Can I please do Tesla again? Yeah, it's got a super solid setup. I think it looks really good. It's setting up in a, oh, oops, I'm on the wrong thing. It's setting up in a super tight flag here on the daily time frame. It looks like it's gonna, run really nicely if it can break over 295, but it needs to get over 295. That's a spot. Can I pin this post? Yeah, I'll send you a screenshot. Well, I'll send a screenshot in the Discord. Here you go. Do you set stop loss at key levels or at fixed percentage below purchase price? At key levels. You never want to set it just based on the options price because then you're not using probabilities to manage your risk. I like to manage my risk due to probabilities, meaning if the stock is holding a specific level, it's holding it for a reason because there's an excess of demand at that level. So there's a better chance for it to hold, a specific level than it is for the option price to hold like a specific percentage. So I like to always set it at, a specific level. However, you don't want your level to be like a huge loss, right? So you want to have it like risk managed that way where your key level shouldn't be no more than like a 30-25% loss. That way you can manage your risk and it's not too big of a loss if you do take a loss. Reddit, I think it looks good. I just wanted to get over 125. I think it looks really good though, but do you see how like every single stock is basically setting up an inverse head and shoulders? This is really good for the markets. Like whenever a lot of stocks set up the same setups, they usually all break out at the same time as well. So that kind of like is the next, leg for the market to go higher. So I'll see if this one wants to get above. I would set alerts over 125 though. It looks super good. GME is signing up well. Looks good if it fits the breakout. Yeah, it does look interesting. It does look interesting. It needs to get a little bit more volume though if it's going to start breaking out. But I would say over 28, it does actually look pretty solid. TEM, this one looks awesome. It just has earnings coming out this week. But this looks fantastic. If you look at the volume patterns, very similar to the first accumulation move right here. Guys, I honestly think TEM is going to be the next PLTR. Don't hold me to that, but I'm buying a ton of shares on it. Yeah, not financial advice, but I think TEM is going to be an absolute beast. I've been talking about this one for a while, and I think shares would pay on this one. I think it's going to come back to 90. FedEx, this is still on the weaker side because it's on. If you look at the weekly chart, it's still below a lot of the key moving averages on the weekly time frame. But on the daily, if it gets through 220, it could run back up to the 50 EMA at 228 and then back to 232. Those could be like your two levels. AT&T is shaping up. Yeah, we looked at that one quickly. It looks good. If it can get over 28, looks solid. Airbnb, I like that one. I'm paying attention to it. It needs to get over 126. We took Docu in January, chopped this out. Yeah, I remember that trade actually. Thoughts on those tickers? It keeps giving me this whack prompt when trying to send. RR and ITRG. So RR looks phenomenal. I like wait, RR. Isn't that Richter Robotics? Or am I on the wrong thing? RR. Shouldn't that be that robotic stock? Oh yeah, it's right here. I don't know why it's pulling up like a different exchange. Okay, yeah, this one looks really solid. So this one looks really good. I really am bullish on robotic stocks. I would like to see a little bit more volume on it, but you can see how like robotics are moving very similar to quantum. Like if you look at RGTI and if you look at RR, it looks very similar in terms of the setup. So I really like it. And then ITRG is the next one. Oh, this is another good one. The volume patterns aren't the best, but the setup is there for sure. I would say whenever I see a high volume sell-off like this, right, on a candle, I would like the stock to get over the candle that made that big like volume print. So I would like for it to get over 1.8 to move higher. Root. Root looks good. This actually looks good. This was a leading stock earlier this year. It pulled back a little bit with the rest of the market, but it's been setting up nicely back again. So I like the setup on it. It's got kind of like a nice flag forming here. By the setup could work even with the market extended. Well, I mean, yeah, they could work with the market extended. For example, I think Tesla could work with the market extended, right? But I wouldn't necessarily like, put my whole account or like have like a ton of, setups on at the same time. I might just hit one or two and see the ones that I have highest convictions on. But yeah, the stocks could, still work really well. I would probably size down as the market's extended, as my ideal buy spot is, a pullback into the moving averages. But I still think that there's, some chances to go higher because, for example, if NVIDIA breaks this key level, I think the markets have no choice but to move higher. So I think, the markets will move with this stock right here, but, we'll see. Will this be recorded? Yes, it's always recorded. AI looks phenomenal. Yeah, I do think AI looks pretty good. I like the setup on it. It needs to get to the 50 MA. Thoughts on China? FXI got long yen, Thursday flag on main. Indices was too good to pass on. Lots of names going to be breaking out of flags coming off the lows. Yeah, I agree with you. I think it looks pretty good. We need to see what ends up happening with like the, the trade deal talks. We had a big gap up on Friday on like BABA and a lot of the China stocks. And then we had some news on like delisting on China stocks, in this weekend. So we'll see what ends up happening. But I do like the charts a lot. If you're just looking at the chart, it looks like it's building like a cup and handle here on FXI. I have a few cons in Microsoft. They expire mid-May. Do you foresee the stock going higher before mid-May? I mean, I guess it really depends on the markets, but it does look super strong. I would say maybe you could target like 450 for your final target. But I would probably start taking profits into these highs because it already made an absolutely massive move. Maybe just trim a few. Besides earnings coming, how do you like RKLB? Looks great. It looks really, really good. You can see volume patterns are very healthy. It's breaking out of this downtrend right here. It popped out of the wedge. It retested the moving averages already, setting up beautifully. Looks really, really good. VIX. VIX is already filling the gap here from the Liberation Day. So this could be a good spot for it to start bouncing a little bit, especially if the markets are going to be weaker. I think this could be a decent spot. So what I would do is kind of set alerts near the gap fill, see what it does around 21. If it breaks under 20 in like the 21 level, it could probably come back down to like 17 and back down to this like range here that we were in earlier in, 2024. Would you take ZS again if it comes back down to 219 level? 100%. I'm watching that one like very closely to add more. PII to the downside. A stock like this that's already down, I don't even know how much this one's down, 80% off the highs. I usually don't like to short these type of stocks, but it has just continued to go lower. So I could see what you're seeing on it. I usually like stocks that are a little bit, closer to the first distribution phase, which would be like right here. This was distributing right here. And then this is where like the big leg down started. I would prefer to trade them up here. Oh, VIK. Sorry, I'm blind, dude. My bad. I don't know why I thought I saw VIX. Okay, VIK is basically setting up what I think the market is going to do. So it already has this inverse head and shoulder setup. This is a great chart. I don't know where you found this, but this looks really good. Actually, I think I know where you found it. I think you found it on my screener because I think I saw this one actually pop up. But yeah, it looks good. Over 42.2. It's probably going to run back to 52. Reddit has large sell volumes the past 2 days. Yeah, it's also coming off of earnings, right? So we need to see how it digests the earnings report. So yeah, ideally we'd want to see it take out the high. In that case, like I said, if you see a candle with super high volume off the highs, to invalidate that candle, you just want price to get over the highs of that candle. That's usually when I would, look for a move higher. Airline and cruise stocks are gaining momentum and their seasonality triggered in. Yeah, I actually really like those stocks as well. Even hotel stocks look pretty good. There's a pretty nice theme there. CoreWeave, this one looks solid as well. I think it's a little bit overextended from Friday, but I think it probably continues to run higher. It's been squeezing, moving really well. I think this one could have a good chance to pull off like a pretty similar move to like Reddit earlier this year right here. Could you see Reddit has a very similar setup on it? It like pulled all the way back into the IPO low and then kind of ran back up. I think CoreWeave sets up pretty similar to that. Actually, you know what? It looks almost identical. It pulled all the way in like this and it's moving up. Another one that looks similar is Bull. These two look pretty similar. So I like the theme there. RDW. This is another one I like, right? This is like a drone stock, right? If I'm not mistaken. It's in the aerospace sector, but I think it's like drones. Looks really good. This is another theme. Like there's like 4 themes that I've been really watching: robotics, quantum, aerospace, and drones. These are like the themes that I think look really good. So this looks solid. RDW, if it can stay above 12, I think it goes higher. And RCAT, I know for a fact, is a drone company. So yeah, this looks solid. Yeah, there's a lot of these like themes that are kind of waking up now. See if this can get some momentum to it. You could see how like it got momentum a little bit earlier on, you know, April 10th, but it ended up fading out. See if we can get a little bit more momentum to it. CoreWeave for sure. Yeah, CoreWeave looks solid, like really, really good. I took KO 67.5 put, 4516. Should I hold or sell? I lost a lot on that stock so far. Your thoughts and help would be really good. I'll take a look for you, but for next time when you're taking a trade, just keep in mind you should already have like a predetermined, you know, stop loss or something so that you know where to, you know, take it off if it goes against you. But it's good to learn off of those, you know, trades that you're taking. So what I would probably say, actually, do you know when you enter this? So I'd have like a better idea on like, you know, what you're in and stuff. I'd say probably I would use maybe like 72 as a stop loss. And then as long as it stays under 72, you can maybe look to take it back down to 70. But I think 67.5 might be a little bit too far out the money. So it might be better to just get out of that. ODNS. ONDS. Okay. ONDS. Drone ticker 2. Chart looks ready to pop. Yeah, this one's is you know, penny stock though. So gonna be hard to trade options on it. But it does look solid if you're looking to trade commons. Nike over 59.60 looks decent, especially. Yeah, if we have good news, I like that trade on Nike to fill the gap to the upside. LQMT. Oh, this looks really good. Another penny stock though, right? So, yeah, it's a penny. So I would just, you know, trade shares on it. Maybe look for it to get through this level right here, 0.13. See if it gets some continuation. Just join. Have you gone over Kava? Able to look for that quick setup plan if you like it. Yeah, it does look really good. I have looked at it on my, you know, scan. I just think it maybe needs like a day or two more sideways to like build out a flag, but I think it looks really solid. If it gets over like 97, I think it runs back to 100. ADMA set up for a wedge pop. Yeah, it could be. It already kind of, you know, popped over this spot right here, but it could be setting up for like a wedge continuation for sure. Looks really good for potential to the upside. Don't think you've gone over a firm. If so, disregard. I went over it shortly, but we can go over it again. It's setting up in that potential inverse head and shoulders, in my opinion. It wants to maybe put something like this in, but it does look really good. Notice the volume patterns on a firm. It looks very, very good. So I think if it breaks over 53, it's going to continue to run. It looks super solid. Berk B, I'm honestly gonna be very you know, I'm not sure what's gonna happen with Berkshire with you know, Warren Buffett stepping down. I'm gonna be really curious to see what ends up, you know, playing out there. We'll see how it moves tomorrow. I don't think it should have that, you know, big of a impact on it, but it does look really good. It looks like I mean, clearly outperforming the S&P QQQ. It's kind of amazing what you know, Warren Buffett's been able to do, making new highs while the rest of the market is at the lows, or not at the lows, but you know, not nearly near the highs. So it's pretty crazy. But yeah, he's definitely the GOAT. But yeah, it looks good. If it can stay over 538, I think it can run back to like 550, maybe 560 from here. It does look pretty solid. Bro sold SPY right at the top. Yeah, he sold almost everything right at the top, like Apple, all that stuff. Pretty crazy stuff. I realize a lot of these names people are mentioning, you're not going to trade yourself, even though you say it's good. Why do you only stick to a particular set of names rather than any name that would have good setups? Because Tristan, you need to have some sort of, you know, difference between a good setup and a setup you're going to trade that's A+, right? Just because a setup looks good doesn't mean it's A+ and ready. So I stick to a certain criteria. For me, my criteria is the stock needs to be ready to break out. A lot of those stocks look good, but they either have earnings coming up or they're just not tight enough for me. So I would like to wait for that certain criteria. And I think that's important to have, because if you don't have that, you're going to be going and chasing every single stock in the market that looks good, because I can literally go over like 500 different names and say all of them look pretty good, right? But I want to focus on the 4 or 5 or 10 that look the best, because if they don't look the best, I can, focus on too much stuff that is outside of my criteria, or that might be missing a few of the things that I look for. So I look for specific criteria. Maybe some of it is just like, learned over experience, over just like when you look at a bunch of stocks over like, multiple years, your eyes and your brain are just like programmed to look at a specific pattern because you've seen that specific pattern repeat itself so much times that it works so well. So your eyes are going to be drawn to that like one specific pattern, right? So I think that's kind of like what happens with me. But yeah, that's why I have like a breakout checklist where I use like, a specific list where it has to, all add up. And if it does, that's going to be an A+ setup that I like to trade. That's kind of how I view it. Hopefully that makes sense. I need his crystal ball. Yeah, dude, we all do. We really all do. But yeah, I think you'll get like, I'm not saying you're going to get, 5,000% returns over your career or whatever. But I think, anybody who buys solid stocks and stocks that, are going to revolutionize the world, something like Palantir, something like TEM, RKLB, right? I think you'll get, pretty good returns. Again, I'm not saying you're going to be Warren Buffett, but if you hold those stocks for years and, you don't get, shaken out when the markets pull back, you add more into your convictions, you hold things long enough, you'll have pretty good success. I recently started mostly trading stocks breaking above prior day's ranges, working nicely. You think this is a good strategy for the long run? Yeah, 100%. That would be very similar to what I do, right? And maybe it would be like, a little bit different in terms of you maybe doing it a little bit like on the smaller time frames, but that's a good strategy because remember, right? If a stock is breaking over a previous high, that's basically what a breakout is, right? So if there's a range and you break you play the break of the range, that's pretty much a breakout. So whether it's on the smaller time frame or big time frame, the breakout still works really well. When is the next bootcamp coming up? Unfortunately, we're not doing the bootcamps anymore. The one that we had was the last one. But we might have, similar something, in the future that comes up or something, but probably not in the near future. Let's say you have 10 A+ setups. How do you wind that list down to like 3 to 5 so you're not looking at that many stocks at once? Do you tend to favor stocks you've traded multiple times before, or do you just set a bunch of alerts? So I would say I do a little bit of both. I do set a lot of alerts, but at the same time, I do narrow it down to like 3 or 5 stocks. And the way that I narrow it down is just by using a checklist, right? So I have a checklist that basically says if this is, this criteria hits, this is an A+ setup. If all 7 of these check the boxes, A+ setup, and then I'll go and I'll rate the setups between, if there's an A+ setup or a B+ setup or, an A setup. And then the ones that are A+, those are the ones that are usually going to be my priority. But that doesn't mean the ones that are A or B, B+ aren't tradable. They're just something I'm watching maybe on like a side watch. But I can always bring it back. And if the alert triggers and it looks great as it's breaking out, I'm still going to trade it. You know what I mean? So usually I just do it like based off of a checklist. But I would say I do also favor stocks I have traded before because it gives you a little bit more conviction. If you've traded Tesla multiple times, you know how Tesla moves, right? You're kind of familiar with how the stock moves, so you kind of know like the personality of the stock. Do you send alerts in the Discord for every single trade you take? Yeah, like probably I'd say 90%. If I don't send an alert, it's probably because the chart just moved too fast. The stock just moved too fast. But I'd probably say like 90 to 95% are alerted. But if it is very high confidence, I will say that as well. Like if it's super high confidence, I'll mention it. I mean, all my trades are obviously high confidence. Like I'm never taking a trade I'm not confident in. But there's just some that like you just know are going to be like huge winners. So I will let you know if it is that type of setup. When you're buying a name related to Bitcoin, does it matter if that name hasn't broken out yet despite Bitcoin breaking out? kind of lagging. I entered Mara last week because Bitcoin was breaking out and Mara didn't break out. I would say for crypto stocks, it actually wouldn't be bad if they're lagging as long as the price action looks pretty good, you know? If it looks pretty good, then I think it still sets up for a continuation higher. And a lot of like the lagging names do end up, you know, coming back and like catching up. For example, you know, Mara's still moving really well, but I would prioritize the ones that look the best. So for example, I think Riot looks better than Mara. You can see Riot broke out on a ton of volume. It's already above the 50 EMA. I think that one looks better, but they both look pretty good, right? They both have pretty nice setups to it. PM consolidating well on decreasing volume. It does look pretty solid. It does look pretty solid. It's got a nice little, you know, look to it. Setting up nicely. I think maybe it needs a few more days, but yeah, it does look good. When I show position size when I take a trade, because I don't think it really, you know, does much, because I don't want people to, you know, be following me in terms of, you know, trying to replicate the exact, you know, trades that I'm taking and stuff like that. I don't think that's sustainable long term. I think it's just good to learn from alerts and stuff like that. I don't think it's really good to follow stuff to the T, to be honest with you. I never thought that was like something that people should be doing. But I do like to explain, you know, the sizing that I take if I'm more confident, stuff like that, and why I would be sized down and, you know, sized up and all that good stuff. SoFi, we already went over this one a little bit, but it looks good. It looks like it's setting up pretty nicely. It just needs a little bit more time, in my opinion. Probably form some sort of like flag or something like that. VRSN. This looks solid. It's super, super strong. What is this? Software stock? Yeah, it looks like it's a software stock. Yeah, it's breaking out of... Wow. Guys, you see this base? Holy... This had probably a better comeback than MSTR. It used to be a $256 stock, came all the way down to $2, and now it's back to $245. That's pretty crazy. It looks similar to MSTR. Huge cup and handle base, 25-year cup and handle base. That's pretty crazy. It looks like it's breaking out now. This is a good one to watch for. This is a really good stock. I would probably buy it on the retest because it is extended here. But if it comes back down, this would be a good one. I don't even know where you found this. This looks good. What are the crypto coins you're holding right now, or which ones are you planning to buy in the near future, if you don't mind sharing? I only have 3 coins right now. I only have Bitcoin, Solana, and XRP. Those are like the only 3 main ones I'm holding. I have a little bit of Ethereum, but I want to get out of my Ethereum because it's been underperforming like every asset ever in the past like year. It's been pretty bad. So I just want to get more Solana. T-Mobile US for a short. Yeah, this could work. It does have like a gap down here off earnings, so it could be like a PG to the downside. I would wait for it to set up some sort of bear flag though, because it still doesn't really have much of a setup to the downside. Maybe like when it tests the 21 and the 50, could be a nice move to the downside. All right, cool guys. I think that's gonna wrap it up. Unless anyone has any final questions, I'm gonna go watch the Warriors game. Please don't spoil